Hello, my name is Linda Burke, Vice President of the Nevada Historical Society Docent Council, and this presentation was developed for the Docent Council volunteers. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Bernie Carter. Bernie grew up in White Pine County and graduated from UNLV. He started in banking and retail in Nevada and Colorado. In August of 2012, ownership of the Reno downtown post office was transferred to 50 South Virginia LLC, which carefully restored the building. Bernie Carter, managing member of 50 South Virginia and founder and visionary behind the Reno Midtown development, will tell us how the ideas, plans, and restoration of 50 South Virginia took place. In the video tour on the website, Bernie states that old men have dreams. Today, Bernie is going to share those dreams with us. Thank you to Carol Coleman for facilitating this session. Fellow docents and friends, Bernie Carter.
So thank you. My name is Bernie Carter. And before we get started, I want to thank a few people. I definitely want to thank Linda Burke and Carol and Sam Coleman for arranging this. And some of the people who worked on our project with us, particularly Mela Harmon and Melinda Guston and Alicia Barber. They are the ones that were our historians throughout this project. And then we want to also thank Ron James, who was with us when we first started, and then Rebecca Palmer and Sarah Folquist, who helped us throughout the process until we actually completed it. When I talk about the we, there's several people that we want to talk about, and the we is basically 4 people. And the 4 people we have been investing for many, many years. And 2 of them, or 3 of them are my brothers, and the 4th one actually lives in Reno. So it's a very small group, and I'm the oldest brother, so you know how that goes. So the first question is kind of, who are these people and what experience do they have? So we actually started doing some projects like this during the mid of 1980 when we did a project in Colorado Springs. And that project was an old Victorian home that we bought from the school district. The school district had used it for cold storage. It had been donated to them by 2 elderly ladies that passed away. And when we acquired it, there was no sewer connection, no water connection. You can kind of see how it was in basically fall down type state. We bought it at public auction for $7,500 in December of 1985 and spent a little over a year redoing it. As you can imagine, the challenges there. We were very successful in being able to do that. And you can see the next slide actually shows a little bit more of the process that we went through. We had to use soda blasting to take the exterior paint off. The amount of wallpaper inside was crazy. That's something I never want to do again. A lot of it was hands-on work. There were basically 2 of us involved with this. But as you can see on the right, it turned out very, very nice. And it's today the office for a psychologist in Colorado Springs, and it has been that way for about 20 years now. So you can see that we have had some experience, not the size of what we've done before, but in Colorado Springs, which we spent some time there. We originally came from Reno. 1972, we moved here, and then moved to Colorado Springs in 1980. And then we're involved with development of various developers in the Colorado Springs market and started doing our own projects. And this was actually one of our first projects that we did. So we returned to Reno in 1995. And with one of my partners, TJ Day, we formed the Dayco Company, which is basically a family office. And that's where the 4 of us got together and started investing. Our goal was to do something a little bit different from what had been done in Reno. And the challenge for us was, during that time period, how do you do something that's a little bit different? We got involved with a lot of different projects, not all of them real estate. Some of them were biotech firms, mining firms, ranching. And so we had a variety of different things that we looked at. The first challenge when we came in, the first challenge that we met was when Reno was considered one of the worst spots to be in the United States, the foreclosure capital of the United States, comparing us to Detroit, which we were. And the challenge was obviously an economic status as to how that works and what we could do to make it work. So the four of us sat down and talked about it, and we decided that the way to make Reno come back was to be able to entice people from the Bay Area to come over and create that environment that they knew in the Bay Area. So we spent some time and went to a lot of different college towns because we believe that Reno really is a college town. The university is a major player and should be a major part of our community. So we went to Palo Alto, Berkeley, obviously, San Mateo, Eugene, Oregon, Corvallis, Boise, Boulder, Colorado, Austin, Texas, Fort Worth. And we saw what those communities had developed and how they had enticed not necessarily the money from the kids, but the energy. And so we started to do that in Reno. And the challenge for us was all of these communities did it in their downtown core area, but our downtown core area was controlled by casinos and in very large parcels. So we went a little bit further south and developed a project called Midtown. And in Midtown, we started with the first project, which is 1215 South Virginia, which is Ace Hardware. And Ace Hardware today still operates as a hardware store and is actually owned by one of the investors and my brother, Tim. We then acquired 955, 701 South Virginia, 699 South Virginia. We actually built out the Sticks projects, and we did 737 South Virginia. So if you look at these on a map, they're all fairly close to each other. And it was enough to create the energy and the synergy to create a positive environment for that. We looked at kind of the type of tenants that we wanted, and we were instrumental in developing the Midtown district. And our goal was to have mom and pop stores, because we believe that's really the vitality and what made it, to be honest with you, what made America was the mom and pop stores that put in the extra hours and had the extra persistence and actually the vitality to make these projects work, because the number of hours is just crazy. But it led to the revitalization of this area. So when Reno started coming back in the 2015, 2016 timeframe, that was one of the articles, there was one of the projects that they spoke of when they spoke of the revitalization of Reno, even in articles, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, they talked about Midtown. Keep in mind, these are basically just four guys, and three of the four of us live in Reno, and three of the four of us were brothers. As a result of that, when we finished that project or completed it mostly, we started looking at other projects. And so we looked at the old post office, and the post office site was originally the Carnegie Library, which is located in South Virginia and Mill. The first federal building was actually across the river, and it was a relatively small building. And so when they built the post office actually had federal offices in it. So even though it says United States Post Office on it, the post office occupied the first floor, and part of the basement and the second floor and third floor were primarily federal offices. If you take a quick look, you can actually see the landscape plan that we used when we did the project. It was a challenge for us to be able to acquire the project. We had a number of articles in the Wall Street Journal that indicated post offices were looking to expand and contract. And so what had happened with our post office is the main post office had moved over to the far east side of our community, over on Vassar. And this building only had approximately 5 employees in it, and the security service for the post office was downtown. So it was it wasn't used hardly at all. And we started negotiating to buy this property, and we had to work through the redevelopment agency. And the redevelopment agency at that time was run by Pete Wallish, and the mayor at that time was Bob Cashel. So with those two people, we started negotiating. It took us 2.5 years to work through this project to be able to acquire it. And the biggest challenge we had was that the offices that controlled the real estate was in Denver. The attorney was in St. Louis, and the people that made the decision were in Washington, D.C. And we had very limited access to it. And one of the things that they would not provide us was any plans, because they told us there were no plans to the building, that they had been destroyed many years ago. Fortunately for us, shortly after we acquired the building, we bought it in August, and the post office stayed in there until the end of the year. And the day after we took possession of the building, one of the local maintenance gentlemen from Vassar Street brought over 5 boxes of plans and said, you know, I think you guys may want these. Fortunately, he did, because in those plans were 2 complete set of blueprints that we have subsequently, with our architect, digitally recorded, and those are available through the Historical Society at the university. And it's a complete set of blueprints. It also allowed us to take a look at some of the things that originally was developed by the architect, DeLongchamp. And what that provided is, like I said, the Art Deco in the downtown core area, the landscaping plan that we mentioned earlier, that was on those plans. And so what we were able to do, and what we've done throughout this project, is basically go back to what DeLongchamp had originally designed, and to take off some of the stuff that had been added to it later, that was obviously a need for the post office, but we felt that we wanted to go back to the core of what the building was. The challenge for us then was to maintain the integrity. Now, keep in mind, the building is part of the National Historical Registry. And so we sat down and we did a mission statement. And this, you can see the mission statement ahead of you. And our big purpose was to provide a revitalization for the building and create revitalization for the downtown core area. We respected the history of the building. Obviously, for Reno, we grew up in Eastern Nevada, and this is our community too. And so that's what we wanted to do, is to be able to do that. So that reflected in our mission statement. It took us 9 months working with Mel Harmon and Alicia and Melinda Gustin to go through and get that development plan done. We then had it go through the State Historical Preservation Office, the City Historical Commission, and the City Council for approval of the plan. And so we were able to do that. The challenge we had in the St. Louis, in the project in St. Louis, was that the St. Louis attorney and the real estate agent in Denver and the people in Washington, D.C. really weren't talking to each other. And so it was incumbent upon our mayor, Bob Cashell, at that time, to reach out to our congressional group, which at that time was Senator Reed and Senator Heller and Congressman Amadei. And each of those sent letters to the post office just requesting that they take us in earnest, and that if there was a deal there to make it, and if not, then that was fine, but at least to consider it. We then worked with Max Hirschnauer and HK Associates. He was the architect that we selected for this project, and he was an absolute godsend. He was just an amazing gentleman to work with. We selected United Construction, and they did all of the work that was committed when we first started the project. They had done a couple of older buildings before, and they had actually looked at this building and submitted a bid to us, and we felt they were the right people to work with us. We had some challenges, as you can imagine. Obviously, asbestos was in the building, primarily in the floors, and it wasn't not only just the tiles, but the glue that held it down was full of asbestos. We had lead throughout, because at that time they painted with lead paint, so we had lead paint throughout, and that was a big issue for us, because one of the challenges we had was how do you handle that so you're not continually handling it. The asbestos, we actually hired a firm that specialized in doing that, and they came in and removed all of the asbestos. We had it all tested. Everything was tested, so the asbestos was removed. As a result of that, we have hardwood floors now that are down, that were the original hardwood maple floors out of Tennessee. We had challenges, as you can imagine, with electrical, with heating. The electrical in 1932, and they did the original electrical. Obviously, the demands for electricity are much higher today in an office building than they were in 1932. The heating, the biggest issue that we had was the building was actually set up and operated by two large boilers. And the boilers were originally coal boilers, and then they had been converted to fuel oil, and then finally to natural gas. But the efficiency each time that you make those changes gets worse and worse. So what we did is we took that entire system out of the building and converted it to a heat pump system. This system also allows for individual heat pumps in virtually all of the office space, all of the spaces. And so most buildings are set up so that you have one thermostat per floor. Sometimes if it's a big floor, there'll be two. This one, each individual office has its own thermostat. And the thing that's important about that is that if you're on the south side of the building, typically you're a little bit warmer because you get that natural sun. If you're on the north side, maybe not so much. And so you can adjust your individual heating unit. The other thing we did is we were able to change the windows on the second, third floor after approval from SHPO to make sure they were very similar to what had originally been in there, because the post office had, in the 70s, when they had put in air conditioning, had changed all the windows, taken all the operable windows out and put in fixed windows. So we were back to basically doing the same. Taking the old stuff that had been done in the 70s and replacing it with the similars we were able to, stuff that the Longchamp had originally built with. We worked with the tenants on tenant improvements, and you'll see a couple of things that in there that were good. We were very adamant with them about maintaining the integrity of the spaces, and that we don't do anything to hamper or to detract from the beautiful common areas that we had. All of the tenant improvements in the first floor were for areas that were the working areas of the building. So that they were actually the places where the people who work for the post office would sort mail and then put the mail in the boxes. We wanted to make this an economically viable project because we believe that's the only way it's going to be long lasting, is to have an economically viable project. And so what we did is we did as the post office originally did, or the federal building, we have 2 floors of office space, the second and third floors, and the center of that is kind of like a donut. So it's got developed what the Longchamp called is a light court. And so you've got a donut where the center is open air, and then you've got a set of windows, a hallway, and then the offices are on the outside. So you've got operable windows in the light court and operable windows on the outside of the building. We believe that creates a very positive environment for people that are working in the office space. The retail on the first floor, West Elm was able to open their windows to some extent, but we haven't removed all of the windows there. They have doors that open. One of the goals for us was usage. In other words, how do we meet our mission statement and attract businesses down here that had not been here before? And so we were able to talk with and get West Elm, which is a division of Williams-Sonoma, to come into our first floor space and create their retail usage there. We've been anecdotally told that this is the first national tenant in 30 years to come to Reno, and we're very excited about having them in our building. On the second floor of the building, there was a company out of Las Vegas that also has a local presence here, Switch. And Switch is both of these companies are New York Stock Exchange companies, and they are in our downtown core area. And we believe that that'll make a huge difference for improving the downtown core area. In the future, we're looking at a few things that we have not been able to accomplish so far. The first one is a mural, and there's always been rumors about there being a mural. We worked with the art museum and their history, the people in their history department. They went back to Washington and to the Smithsonian to see if there was anything that was there. They found the agreement that was with a gentleman by the name of Cunningham, had with the post office to paint murals, and he did many murals during that time in public spaces. He actually has 3 murals on display at the Coit Tower in San Francisco. But no one ever found an image of what the mural was. And the rumor had always been that the mural was painted, excuse me, and then the postmaster came out, didn't like it at all, and had it immediately painted over. What we were able to do is we have a close friend of ours here in Reno, Turkey Stremmel, who is actually a very well-known art restorer. And so Turkey, we put her on a scissor lift and had her go up to our ceiling and check several places. And she was able to find canvas and colors, different colors in the ceiling. So from what I've been told, what they used to do is paint the painting and then literally glue it to the ceiling and then put a varnish over it to protect it. If they've done that, then the chances of us being able to restore that mural is pretty high. If they did not put the cover over it, the varnish, then it's probably impossible, because the first time they painted it, all the paints meshed together. And we're working with a group out of Berkeley that has done this with other 1930 era type projects, and they will be working with us on doing the mural discovery and whether or not we'll be able to do it. If we're able to do that, then that will be a public project. So it'll be open to the public. We'll have them up there restoring those paintings, but everyone will be able to watch it and will be able to videotape it for posterity so people can actually see it. We're also looking at uplighting the building. The building did have some lights put on it originally, but we believe that uplighting the building, and you will not be able to actually see the lights, but they will actually come from basically the ground level up and shine on the building, which we believe will make a huge positive for the downtown area. We're also looking at some small retail spaces, kind of kiosk type spaces on the first floor. And so that would be just two small tenants, but to bring more higher end retail to that area. And we think that's really important. We do have some tenants in the basement. Okay, so let's go before we get to the basement, but this is what the post office actually looked like when we acquired it. One of the things you can see is that down the center core there's the heating ducts. If you look at the left-hand picture, you can see kind of a row of fluorescent tubes. And above that, you see some slots. And that was actually a catwalk that was built. Now, keep in mind, this was 1932. And the slots were actually where the postal inspectors would walk down and watch the employees to make sure they weren't stealing anything. And then if you look at the bottom of that, you'll see some little round cups. And those are actually sound cones, so they could hear conversations. In 32, there were obviously no cameras, and so they would walk along and watch this. Keep in mind, in 32 also, that most of the banks were pretty defunct, and so a lot of people mailed money through the postal service. And so the catwalk is actually there on the first floor, and there's a second one that's in the basement. And they both had private accesses by the postal inspectors through the postmaster's office space. But you can see how kind of a cave that it is, and that's how we found it. That's how it was originally. You can see the mailboxes were the original 1932s. They had some additional ones that were added in the 70s, and those boxes went with the Postal Service to their new location in downtown Reno, their postal hub there. But the old post office boxes, the original ones, we were able to maintain, and you'll see what we were able to do is with West Elm is to maintain the back of the box. And so when the Postal Service left, they actually left the names on the back of the boxes. And so in working with West Elm, we've actually got those glass enclosed, so you can literally look behind where they check out their point of sale area, and you can literally see the names, and many of them very prominent names in the history of Reno. And those are still there today. This is a little bit during the construction phase. On the left-hand side, you can see the work we've been doing and the new windows that are being placed on the second and third floors. It's really important for us. This is all approved by the State Historical Preservation Office, and they were very, very close to what was originally in the building. But to have operable windows to be able to open them up and get fresh air was really important to us. And we thought that was critical for the revitalization of the post office. And then you can see what the Postal Service what it looked like to the right after they left. This is what we started with. This is the core that we started with. Again, no skylight, no nothing. On the left-hand side now, you see the actual taking off of the roof. So what they had done is this light court, like I said, a donut for the second and third floor, and then it would create a skylight on the first floor. So they had filled that in and then put mechanical units in there and then put a roof over the top of it. Unfortunately for us, when we bought the building, there was no one that occupied the third floor. And so whenever there were seams that were split in the roof or there was leaking in the roof, no one worried too much about it until it got to the point that it came down to the first floor, or at least to the second floor where the postal inspectors were. As a result of that, we had some floor damage, as you can imagine, on wood floors. Much of it was buckled. We were able to let it dry out, and some of it went back down. Some of it we had to replace. But the light court was really a positive for us to be able to bring that back to this building. This is a picture of what we found when we started tearing back the ceiling in the main room there. And you can see where on the edges where we were taking the ceiling back, but the structure, the original angles and structure of the original skylight was there. So we were able to work off that and custom build a skylight that fit that space. And it really worked out pretty well. We were pretty excited about that. As you can imagine, building a custom skylight of this magnitude and size is not an inexpensive proposition. But when you're in that first floor and you see that light comes through there, that natural light, it's just amazing. And then on the second and third floors, the windows, where the original windows had been, they had just basically used cinder block and had sealed them up. But they left the frames, so the brick frames were there. And so we were able to take the cinder block back out and put the original windows sizes back. We just had to make sure that they were all the right size. And so through this light court, you have open air windows that go into the hallways on the second and third floor. And on the second floor, there's an access to an atrium because this is like a catwalk that goes around this skylight. And we have that available. We kind of discourage that from having outdoor seating, but we actually do have it up there, but only Switch is allowed to use it today because they occupy the entire floor. But you can see the difference. So the HVA system, that was a huge, huge project for us. And what we did is the Cochrane Ditch, which comes off the Truckee River, is the ditch that goes to Virginia Lake. And so that's where the water for Virginia Lake comes from, and then it continues on from there. We actually tied into that. Like I said, it was 14 feet underground underneath our parking lot. We tied into that Cochrane Ditch. It's a concrete ditch, and then brought the water up, replaced it back into the thing, and used no water at all, just the geothermal part of it. And we eliminated the entire boiler system. We actually have tenants that are in that room now where the boiler system was. And it's extremely friendly, economically friendly and environmentally friendly because you're not using any water. You're not using hardly any natural gas. You use a little bit in the wintertime if the water's frozen, but that's about it. And so the difference in cost in operating the building after we got it built was substantial. The post office during the last months that they had it, we received a bill, and I believe the bill was around $16,000 for 1 month. And like, keep in mind, they only had 3 or 4 people there and then some postal inspectors there. Our cost today runs between $2,000 and $3,000 a month. So huge, huge savings, not only in energy, but economically. So we're really excited about that project, and it's worked really, really well for our tenants too. I told you a little bit about the challenges we have. So in the 70s, what they had done is they put heating systems in, and they ran not heating systems because they had radiators, but they put forced air systems in, and they did the air conditioning. And so as you look at this picture, you can actually see there were 3 different levels of ceilings that were in this space. So the one is to the left, you can see it's right above the door, a couple inches above the door. And then the second one was where the darker color is. And then the third one is at the very top of the ceiling. And so what they had done is they had taken the original transoms out and used that for ductwork and then cut more holes in the wall. So what we did is we took the ceilings all the way back to what was original, and not only original, but up to the beams. And so you had open ceilings with the piping that's up there, the electrical that's up there, all of that is exposed now. And that gives you a very tall ceiling, 12 to 14 feet. And then we filled in most of the holes and put the transoms all back in over the doors. So all of the doors today have transoms as they did originally, and all of these walls have been patched. And if you look at it today, it's all a finished wall. Part of the challenge for us was, if you could look in the center of it, you can see one of the ceilings and see all the holes that were in it. So keep in mind that all of that had lead paint on it. And so rather than trying to fix that, and then every time we went in for a tenant dealing with the lead paint, we decided to take it all the way up. The interesting thing was that all of the tenants that are up there, they absolutely love that open space and that open ceiling. And so I don't believe we'll ever change that. But you can see the challenge in taking down 3 different levels of ceiling that was in that hallway to get their lead paint out. Our process is an adaptive reuse. That's what we called it, and that's what we were trying to do. And that's basically taking a historical building and repurposing it. And you can see some of the Art Deco things that made our building special. All of these are visible in the building today, and you can see they've all been preserved, and we will continue to preserve them. But very, very unusual. Keep in mind, these are all, the ones that you saw just a second ago were all cast aluminum. And then outside the building, you can see the eagles and the designs that were the Art Deco designs for the building. Very unusual. We are so excited to be able to maintain these for us and then for the future of the folks that live in Reno. We had a grand opening, which was kind of fun. We had we invited all of the postal employees from the post office that either worked before for the post office or worked there, and invite them over for a little kind of open house. And we had some dancers actually do a little extravagant thing. The lady in the middle with the big headdress is actually one of our owners, my brother Tim. That's his daughter. And so they came and gave us kind of a special thing to think about when we thought about the post office and made it a special evening. So that was a fun thing to do. The question is really whether or not it makes economic sense, because if it doesn't, then how do we do that? As we indicated before, West Elm occupies the first floor, and they are a furniture store and home decoration store. The second floor is occupied entirely by Switch, and they're a New York Stock Exchange company, as is West Elm, which is owned by Williams-Sonoma. And the third floor, we originally had leased to a company that was a startup, the chip design firm, and then Burning Man. So it's partially occupied by Burning Man today. And this is the first office for Burning Man out of the San Francisco area. And we're excited about the energy that they bring and the positive that they bring to our building and to our downtown area. They could have gone anywhere, but they felt that being downtown was important, and we were excited about being able to do that. As I indicated, in the basement, there's 10 small businesses, barber shop, coffee shops, jewelers, skincare, Norwegian gift products, speakeasy. It's designed for mom and pops, and that's what we really want to have, is to continue that support for those small businesses in the basement area. And the spaces are relatively small. They go anywhere from 200 square feet to about 900 square feet. So it works for these people also. It gives them a chance to be in the downtown core area, but also to have a viable business. And we think that's really, really important, because many of them, they help support their families, and not totally support their families on what they're able to do down in the basement. In the basement where the furnaces used to be, we've got a variety of different events that we did down there. This was actually a high school, came in and did a choral group, and they had some of their band members play. And so it's a pretty special place down there now. We are in the process of repurposing that from the lecture hall to create more positive vibes down there, because we really didn't have a lot of activity. We had some, but didn't have a lot of activity by groups wanting to come down there. And that's part of the challenge, is getting people to come to downtown Reno for these type of events. So we're in the process of repurposing that, and we'll be making an announcement on what's going there relatively soon. But that's it. So how successful were we? How did we do with our revitalization, our repurposing our building? So 50 South Virginia was the first project. The Renaissance Hotel, which is just across from us, literally across the street from us, was bought after we started our project, and it is now, it originally was the Holiday Inn, and it's now a Renaissance, which is actually the highest flagged hotel in our community. Patagonia came in about 6 months after we started the renovation, and they are literally a block and a half away from our building. Behind them is a plaza that was basically just the bones of a building, and that's being redone into condo units. And there's a pizza place there and a couple of restaurants. And so it's done a pretty darn good job. Chase Bank recently came into the downtown core area, and they're 2 blocks away, where Bank of America had left and Wells Fargo had left the downtown core. So we're excited that they came back and decided to come back to our downtown core area because we think that's a positive thing. So other projects in the future for this group of 4, and unfortunately one of our partners passed away. And so we work with his estate, but we're still looking at the downtown Reno core area. We have done a pretty good job, we believe, with the city on south of the river, and between us and the Renaissance and the city, the courthouses and the projects that the city has, it's actually done pretty good. Our challenge now is to go north of the river and see if there's projects up there that make the same sense, that we can hopefully make the same positive impact to our city. So we'll take a look at that and see. We're not prepared to commit to anything right now. We just want to get through the projects that we have. They're economically viable. And of course, we have the COVID issue that has been a challenge for everyone. Will there be projects in the future? I believe so. Probably not a lot. I'm getting to the age where the energy level is not what it used to be 10 years ago. But I still believe that there's great opportunity in downtown Reno to do some really amazing things. So thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss this. Carol's going to show a video, I believe now, and this is available at 50southvirginia.com. And it's just click on that and then click on tour. And it's a little 6-minute tour that we made actually when we first started the project, in interviewing our architect, our construction company, our mechanical engineer. They talk about the project and kind of what our goals were there. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk with you. And if you have any questions, please get a hold of Carol or myself, and we'll be happy to answer them for you. Thank you.
For me, the one line that I would love to hear is they did it right.
I just want everybody to be proud of it. Reno is reinventing itself. We are not the casino-heavy town that we used to be. I just want everybody that lives in Reno to look at it and say, that's my post office.
That's how the revitalization of downtown started, was with the post office. If we're able to accomplish that, then I think we'll be very happy and very proud. So the objective is to bring the post office back to its former glory, as it was originally designed in 1932, and to create a positive environment for our downtown core area, and hopefully provide a catalyst for additional business to come down to our core area.
The Reno Post Office, our downtown post office, was designed in 1932 and was designed by one of our probably most renowned architects, Frederick de Longchamp. It opened in 1934, and it was Reno's main post office, probably the biggest post office that Reno had seen. But it was also the federal building, so there was a lot of activity. It was a real hub of downtown. For me as an architect, the design of the building is just very unique. The style of the building is classical revival. It's got a lot of Art Deco components to it, which you'd see in the 1930s. Some of the detailing is really just fantastic. It's a relatively simple building architecturally, but again, I think that the quality of materials is just, you don't see that today. There's the limestone and the terracotta and the marble, inside and outside, you know, are really unique and luckily have been preserved throughout the years.
Just the pure craftsmanship that went into the building is just amazing at every level.
You couldn't afford to do it today. And finding the craftsman would be very difficult to do too. To find someone that casts aluminum like that, the marble workers. We received an anecdotal comment from our architect that the plans that we originally found for 1932 when de Longchamp did it would not qualify as a complete set of plans today, because the craftsmen back there knew exactly what to do, and it's very difficult to find those craftsmen today. So the architects today have to have much more detail in their drawings than what they did back in 32.
Anytime you get into an old building that has been renovated over the years, things are hidden, things are not always as they seem, not always on the plans that you actually, if you can find plans to begin with of what's being built.
So when the building was originally constructed, it had, I believe, their 12-foot high ceilings. And then in the 50s, when they went through the first addition of air conditioning into this facility, they dropped the ceiling down by about 2 feet to put in the duct runs. Then in the 60s, when they added the ventilation component to the heating, ventilation, air conditioning system, they dropped the ceiling down again another couple feet. Where the current skylight is, they blocked that and filled it up with mechanical equipment. And so it was like walking in a cave, very claustrophobic, very uncomfortable. And so through these new additions that Bernie has done, we were able to get back to the original high ceiling, restore all the windows into the atrium, including the skylight. So now we have wonderful natural light coming into the building. All the windows are operable, so you can open them up, get the fresh air in, and have a great work environment.
If you look at the things that were scabbed onto it for the last 80 years, all it did was detract from its original beauty. I mean, you can take your LEED certification and apply it to that building, and it's LEED certified.
The heat pump technology allowed us a lot of freedom. The one thing that makes this building stand by itself relative to other heat pump buildings is we tied into the old Cochrane ditch. Recognizing that we had this nice flow of water, we decided to go ahead and use that source, that thermal energy in that water, to provide for our heat pumps. And so we developed a very simple system to put our pump in, pull the water out of the ditch, push it into our building, give up its energy, and then push it right back out upstream from where we pulled it. So that means that we're going to save between 300 and 500,000 gallons of potable water a year that we would have required if we were not allowed to tap into that river source for our cooling side. For our heating side, we're going to be able to save lots of natural gas because we're going to use the thermal energy out of the water instead of having to run a boiler. Each space is going to have its own heat pump system with its own thermostat. So each individual office space will have its own thermal comfort control.
You know, it's really been an honor to work on it and to be able to take away some of the unfortunate things that are done and bring the building back to its, you know, original glory. It's been a great thing to do.
By doing this, by going through this exercise, that we're preserving it not only for ourselves and our children, but for our grandchildren. So when they go into the building, they see that cast aluminum, they see that marble etching. That's something they would normally not see. And they see how it all fits together. And so you're actually passing down that bit of history to them. You know what? Old men have dreams too. And part of our dreams are what do we pass on? What kind of legacy, as you indicated, do we pass on? And this will be something that we can look at probably for the rest of our lives and maybe our children's lives and say we had a part in bringing that back, that little bit of history, that little bit of Reno, that little bit of character back to our community in a very successful endeavor.
So thank you very much. I just want to leave you with one last thought. This was a quote that was done by Theodore Roosevelt, and I've had it in my office for probably 30 years. And it just talks about being a critic and about the guys that actually are in the ring and actually doing the work. That it's easy to be the critic, but it belongs to the people that actually are in the ring, who face the mark, dust, sweat, and blood. And I hope that I follow those guidelines, and I know that you folks do. And in anything that we do in the future, that we keep that perspective. So that's the end of the presentation. I'm ready to answer any questions that you may have. And thank you very much for your time. It's been an honor for me to be before you today and to present the story of the post office.
Hi, I really like the video. We were asked to watch it before. I watched it 3 times. I learned new words. One man said, no, he said LEED.
LEED certification, yeah. So LEED is an energy system that
that's been put out for probably 15, 20 years. And it's either, I think it starts silver, gold, platinum, LEED certified. And what it deals with the efficiency of the building itself. So in our building, it's highly efficient because of the structure of the building, but also in all of the tenants that go in, everything that they do has to be LED certified. So we don't do fluorescent lights anymore. We don't do incandescent lights. Everything has to be LED lights to maintain that energy efficiency. So it's actually, buildings will actually be built based on energy efficiency, and they may receive an LED certification. And that's what that refers to.
In the past, I heard that de Longchamps used a symbol to other cultures is very positive, but to us in the 30s and the 40s, the swastika. I had not seen that symbol, but I know it was part of de Longchamp's plan. Are they still there? Are they still there?
They are, yes. And so we actually have a history wall that's in the basement. And the history wall talks about it shows construction of the building, and then it shows the Longchamp, and it talks about some of the things. And the one thing that it does talk about is what we refer to as a swastika. And it talks about historically that symbol actually goes back to biblical times, and that it is actually a positive sign, not a negative sign. And keep in mind that this is in 1932, so this is well before the rise of the swastika in Germany, and as we know it, as we thought that we knew it during that time period. In addition, on the end of the table, if you look closely, there's a little figure that is actually a six-sided star. And so you can equate that to Judaism. So there's a lot of things that, depending upon what you want to get out of it, that you can get out of it.
The Cochrane ditch, when you're in the basement, you can see a ditch. Is that the Cochrane ditch?
No, the Cochrane ditch is actually underground when it comes to our building. It basically goes through the parking lot. So the Cochrane ditch the water comes out before you hit Sierra Street, and then it goes underground at that point, and it goes all the way underground until it hits Virginia Lake.
In 1950s, when we had the big flood in Reno, was the post office damaged at all?
Part of the basement was. And what they did as a result of that is in the basement area, they actually built an additional 3-foot wall. So the original plans have a basement that you could actually see the windows. And what they did is they built a 3-foot wall to keep the water out in any future flooding, and then put barriers across the top of it. So for security, they don't have a problem. So they actually did do that in the 50s. And fortunately, now that we have the new bridge, if you remember a couple of years ago, we had flooding in January, early January, and it wasn't even close to coming up over the side of the walls there. And the walls, incidentally, that are on our side of the river actually belong to the property, and they're historical walls too.
Okay, the walkway, you said that most of the employees were men, so the bathrooms that are in the basement were the men's bathroom, not the women's bathroom. Can I see the walkway?
Yes, you can.
In the women's bathroom, that's now the women's bathroom.
Yeah, no, there's none there. There's the catwalk is on the other side. It goes down the middle of the building. And so there was none that were in the women's bathroom, just in the men's bathroom.
Well, I'm gonna have to invade that space today. I'm going there for lunch. Okay.
Well, come down and see, because it's you can actually see it. And what we've done is we've opened it up, and when you look at it, it looks kind of strange because there's a bunch of ropes hanging down, and you wonder, what is this for? And what it was for was that the inspectors, when they would walk along, because it was dark, there are pipes that go through there. So if they hit one of the ropes, they would know to duck down so they don't run into the pipe. And it's visible. You can see it from the basement today.
Carol, I have another question. The Masonic Lodge, it put the cornerstone in somewhere in 33 or so. Does the cornerstone have a time capsule in it?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
I don't have any idea. Be sure to look at our history wall when you come down in the basement, because it shows actually the placement of that. It shows the newspaper articles. It shows the gentleman, and talks about the gentleman that had the newsstand in the first floor. It talks about the building. The building actually is a structural steel building that's then been encased with concrete. So it's a very, very stable building. In the 60s, it was a bomb shelter. And the building was designed for 4 floors by a mining engineer. So it's over-engineered, over-structured. And as a result of that, we don't have a lot of cracking. It's just a very nice structure.
It's known as 50 South Virginia Street now. Did it have a different address in the 30s?
I don't think so. I think it's always been 50 South Virginia.
Okay. Thank you. Very nice talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
So 50 South Virginia is the name of the LLC and the name of the building now, when once it was called the Downtown Post Office or the Federal Building. It's a renaming. Well, Bernie, that was great. Really
Thank you, Carla.
appreciate it.
Linda, this is what a great opportunity for us. I really appreciate it. And anything else we can do in the future, we'll keep you posted. But anything we can do in the future, we're more than happy to. Thank you.